Thank you. Thank you so much. Toshi, thank you for speaking. While we're setting up, first of all, let me say welcome to the guys in Davao who are watching the live stream together there, as well as the people in New York City who are watching it in New York, in NYC Alley. Most especially, thank you to the many faces I see here again. Some of you I've only met online, and it's great to see you back. Last year, we were here in the same room, and we talked about the power of social media, and we talked about what we can do. It's 1 year later, and we have some things to report to you that's actually the power that you've put together and what we've been able to accomplish with it. 1 year from now, we have what one author called a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal, that together, top-down government, along with bottom-up civic engagement, us, can actually deal with the problem that has been, well, it's unsolvable. It's a wicked problem, right? Hashtag 2030 now. Since 2009, since Ondoy, when I hear rain, it's different. We know it in Manila. We feel it. So what can we do about it? Those are some of the things that I want to talk to you about today, and I'll take you through the technology, and I'll take you through, I'm taller now. I'll take you through what we can do together. I'll start. Some of you guys have heard me talk about this before. How do we put together ourselves, you, the hero? How do you put that together with social media, with crowdsourcing, with big data? That's kind of how I want to start and show it to you. The difference between information and big data, which is actually what we want to try to harness to help in disaster risk reduction, to help in climate change adaptation, is the difference between a photo. And I'll start with where my own journey began. This is a photo in June of 2008 in a crisis room, and knock on wood, Zamboanga will end this weekend. But this, again, was dealing with the Abu Sayyaf. We had three of our journalists, Ces Drilon, Jimmy Encarnacion, and Angelo Valderrama, were kidnapped by the Abu Sayyaf. I had the unfortunate experience of having to run the crisis team. And we did something that was different. This is a picture of the crisis room where we took, again, a collaborative effort. Members of the police, the chief negotiator from the police, he's sitting there. That's him here. Oh, you can't see it. This guy here. The brother of Ces, who's actually here, you're listening to a phone where we're negotiating with her. You know, Glenda Gloria, she wrote the book on the military, and most recently in 2011, Military Corruption. She is our managing editor, but she was also part of our crisis committee. What we did is we bypassed the hierarchy. And when we bypassed that hierarchy, we were able to get them out in 10 days. The reason I show you this is because when it's like this, it's a picture, it's a photo. But if you put 26 frames per second, there's a new name for it. It's called video, film. That's the difference between information and big data. It actually changes everything. This was an obsessive moment, and this moment, actually, in that whole old Chinese statement, you know, out of crisis comes opportunity. All of the things that we learned here is actually what led us to Rappler and to the book I wrote in 2011. This is about social networks. And the reason I'm telling you about social networks is it took me a year to kind of go through the kidnappers who were there and map. This is a map that was done by Core Lab at the Naval Postgraduate School in the United States that basically traces terrorism from the spread of terrorism from Afghanistan. You have here Syed Khattab. He's the guy who actually, I can't reach it, but way up on top, you'll see him. He's the ideological inspiration for Osama bin Laden, who you'll see here, somewhere in the middle there. Actually, let me show it to you. I can reach that. Osama bin Laden here. Then let's bring him to Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. He's the 9/11 mastermind. After Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, we're going to come back down through Hambali. He's the Indonesian guy who carried out the Bali bombings in October of 2002. Then we come to the two Indonesians, Dulmatin and Umar Patek, who fled Indonesia after Bali, came to the southern Philippines, lived here for 7 years. And then we come down to here, Salih Said, the guy who actually physically picked up, dragged Sess, Jimmy, and Angel from their Jeep to the forest. That's the flow. When you can map things, and this is part of the reason, you'll see throughout the day how you are connected to everyone else in this room. Because as you're tweeting, we're pulling down, and Russell will create a map that will show you how we're all connected. When you see how we're connected, you can do lots of things with that. We can chart social networks. We can harness the power of social networks. Here, it's spreading something bad. This is the problem. It can spread good. It can spread evil. But we can map the spread of emotions and behavior. I want to talk to you about how information becomes big data. And we came from a physical social network. What is social media? It's just your physical social network on steroids, right? You just take your family and friends and then you get rid of boundaries of time and space. And that's social media. So what kind of information are we getting? Look at how much you're getting. More than 10 million photos uploaded every hour. The 5 hours that we'll be here before lunch, 10 million times 5. Click and I know if you're in this room, you're Filipino, there's 94 to 96% of us are on Facebook. Click a like button or leave a comment nearly 3 billion times a day. How do you make sense of that information? On YouTube, which is where we're live streaming, you have to catch the live stream on YouTube. 800 monthly users upload over an hour of video every second. How much video has been uploaded while I'm sitting here speaking to you or standing? And then, of course, let's go to Twitter, where you're at. The number of tweets grows around 200% every year. And the last number that I could find was 2012, more than 400 million tweets a day. How do you make sense of this? Because every single granular detail tells its own story. That is how much information. That's big data, right? So I'm not the first to say this. There's a great book I'd recommend, Big Data, by Victor Meyer-Schonberger and Kenneth Coquier, where they said that the amount of information changes everything. The change of scale is a change of state. We still call it information, but it went from picture to video, and we didn't even realize it. This is the power we can tap. We change the essence by changing the amount. Big data is a major, massive transformation, and we can use it as a tool to solve some of the world's worst problems, some of the upcoming problems that we have to deal with 2030 now, right? And these are just 3 ideas, 3 major shifts in the way we have to think. We're still used to thinking like it's statistical sampling, right? But in this new world, we have the ability to analyze vast amounts, and that's being churned now as we speak. N equals all instead of random sampling. So forget trying to get that perfect sample. You don't need it. You gather everything, and when you gather everything, the second part will happen. You're going to get a lot of garbage in it. As scale increases, so do inaccuracies. But what we lose in accuracy, we actually gain insight at the macro level. So at the micro level, you can lose some accuracy, but when you pull it up to what I call, well, I'm not the only one to call this, to God's eye view, you see a picture you would never have been able to see. And that's the third big point here, is that automatically when you look at big data, you see what, and then you'll have to dig to find out why. Most of the time when we're doing random sampling, you have to already ask a question. In this one, when you use big data, you can actually see everything without even asking a question. So it's much more open, it's freer of bias, except for, I was saying the geeks will rule the world. The geeks are there, Google geeks and Rappler geeks. Be careful of those guys. I'm gonna use a case study of Rappler. As you guys know, we're a little over a year and 8 months, a year and a half. We'll be 2 years by January. So this is what we are. What is Rappler? We made up the name. And for journalists, that's really tough. That's the mind shift we went through. Rap, back to the 80s days, to talk, plus ripple, to make waves. That's what we wanted. Our core is still the same, professional journalism, but adapting new technology. That new technology gives us the wisdom of the crowds. Another great book by James Suryeki called The Wisdom of the Crowds. If you haven't read it, I'd recommend it because it'll give you an idea to how we work together. When you put the crowd together, regardless of what genius goes up against the crowd will always be more accurate. And that's the foundation of Project Agos. That's the foundation of the initiatives we'll show you today. This is where Rappler stands. And when you put it there, this is how we put it together. Content creation, which is not just the professional journalist, but you. And there have been some wonderful, 20% of the content of Rappler comes from you. And you are saying things and doing things that we could never have imagined. You know, real life is actually stranger than fiction. And we're getting that from you, right? It's like embedding in every community. Content creation amplified by social media, which is each of our social networks on steroids, asking for crowdsourcing, which is what? All of us taking one small step to actually come together, that's here, and that crowdsourcing leading to big data. I'll quickly show you what's the impact of this. Well, I'll tell you, just for Rappler alone. In less than 2 years, we're the 3rd top online news site. That's incredible. I wouldn't have been able to imagine it a year ago. But this is Alexa rankings, which is publicly available. You can go online. Philippines in the top 50 sites. Number 1 is the top ranking site, which in the Philippines is either Google or Facebook. I'm not quite sure. I think it's Facebook, right? But you can look at it and look at how things change. Rappler has less than 100 people. We're working against groups that have 1,000. You know, again, look at the power of a few that leads to the power of the many. This is the idea, not just for today, but for hashtag 2030 now. Nothing great can be done alone. You need to actually work together. We need to collaborate together, that every single little push, even if you're 10 years old, will make a difference. And that's the point. So this technology allows you to see the human superorganism, right? When we're talking about big data, some of you guys have seen this. I love this map. I show it to you all the time because they're not Rorschach tests. This is a snapshot of human societies at particular moments in time. A is hashtag Japan, the tsunami. This is March 2011, tsunami, the Fukushima reactor accident. That's the way people behave during times of crisis. We form hubs, are looking for information. Most of the time that's government or that's news groups. Second, hashtag GOP, that's the American human superorganism, 6 months before the US presidential elections. Is there nothing that shows you clearer how divided Americans were between Mitt Romney and Barack Obama? Right? Parang kitang-kita eh. And that's tens of thousands of millions of tweets of Americans. So that's not hypothesis. That's not me thinking it out. This is what a revolution looks like. Hashtag Egypt, at the time when a 30-year dictatorship was killed. Not killed, let's just say ended, right? And then next to it, hashtag Syria, ongoing. This is 18 months of an ongoing rebellion against Syria's President Bashar al-Assad. What's interesting when you look at both of these is that their hubs are much smaller than hashtag Egypt. And that kind of makes sense because why? They're fighting their own government, right? So the question that you ask here is, if Syria looks like this, if Syria begins to look like hashtag Egypt, does that mean a revolution has happened? Does that mean the government has been ousted? course I got to bring you to the Philippines. And of course it's more colorful because it's more fun in the Philippines. Diba? So, if you don't know it, this is day 44, the Corona impeachment trial. This is decision day, judgment day. This is when the Philippine Senate, acting as judges, ousted a Chief Justice of the Philippine Supreme Court. If you can go on Rappler, you can go into the site and zoom in. You can type in your Twitter account to see your social networks. And what you can see is you can actually take apart what spreads through these links. Who's pro-corona? Who's anti-corona? You can see these things when you see the map. This is the first day of the campaigns. And again, very interesting, right? It looks like a mess, but it's not. Just remember the way it looks, right? When you zoom in, you'll notice that all of our political parties are part of the same social network. All. Team Pinoy and Una sa Senado, both of them, Liberal Party, they're part of the same social networks. In fact, if you go back, the only politicians not part of this magenta social network are the left groups. Gabriela Philippines, it's down here to the left, right, to my left. You can see here, Teddy Casino is down here, Gabriela Philippines. Again, you see the pattern, right? So you can see that there's no better visualization of how the Philippines doesn't have any real political party system. You've heard analysts say it, now you can see it visualized. A year ago today, well, not today, but a year ago, SocialGood Summit was here. We had our Secretary of Tourism, It's More Fun in the Philippines talk. You had Bianca Gonzalez, who is celebrity with substance. She had 1.7 million followers on Twitter. And then Chris Lau, you guys remember the man who wasn't informed. But remember, this was the very first time he spoke publicly. And he spoke about how he almost committed suicide because of the way he was treated by us online. Right? So again, it was a chilling factor for us to realize the power we had. Last year at the SocialGood Summit, we hit 91.6 million tweets and retweets. This year, where will we go? The virtual world has expanded. The number of Filipinos on Twitter has expanded. Facebook calls us, actually this is ComScore, which is a US-based group, calls the Philippines the Facebook capital of the world, the social media capital of the world. What are we going to look like this year? 91 million, 91.6. That shows you the reach of social media. You can map it. And the reason I like doing this is because you can actually see, this is the Philippine footprint here. Bianca and Tim Yap were the celebrity networks. They're in yellow. This is us, the journalists, the citizens. When you put it together, look at how big our footprint is compared to, hi, New York. This is Mashable here, right? And this is the American footprint. Little Philippines punches above its weight. What happened August 26? A Facebook post in 7 days brought out about 100, the police estimate 80,000 to 100,000 people in Luneta Park. Collective outrage turned into action. And this is what's funny. If you were out there, people said there was great feeling of solidarity, but it was also kind of boring because there was no program. There was no leader. People didn't know where to go. Right? And you know what? This, created by the internet, peer-to-peer networks, this is what we looked like online. Do you see how messy it is? How on the verge of chaos it is? The challenge to us is how do we get all these distinct groups to actually self-organize? And what does that mean? That means we need to find some kind of way where we can still be ourselves, but be able to work together. The challenge for hashtag 2030 Now. I want to break apart all of those tweets for you. This is what it looks like. It took nearly 7 days to hit 10,000 mentions on Twitter, but on the 7th day, that's August 25, you had here another 10,000 in the second bump here. I'll come to you. Here, and then look, like a medical contagion, it's hit 30,000. Do you know what time? 7 a.m. on August 26. August 26. So like a tipping point. And then at 7 a.m., people were really active on social media, and they went out on the streets at 10 a.m. Can you predict what will happen based on our behavior on social media? These are just some of the lists of things that are being done with the crowd around the world. And I will leave you with this slide. I won't go through all of them. We're not the first, but we can certainly be among the most powerful and perhaps the most directed if we can organize ourselves, move away from that chaos, and come together, truly collaborate. I'll move to crowdsourcing and what we do in Rappler. This is personal experience. We decided we will crowdsource your mood for every story. Why? The neuroscientists say that up to 80% of how we make decisions in our lives is not based on what we think. So I will not appeal to what you think. I will appeal to your emotions. As a journalist, medyo masakit yun para sa amin eh. Kasi, di ba, sabi sa amin, huwag kayong maging emotional. Eh, yung pala emotional kasi kayo eh. So, kailangan maging emotional kami. The emotions were chosen with a group of psychologists and sociologists, some of them who do the surveys. We consulted with them. But this mood meter is on every story. And then we let technology do its job. All of the votes on the mood meters are aggregated in the mood navigator at the middle of the front page. This is a snapshot, again, a moment in time. The mood navigator on the last day of May, Saturday. There was an explosion at Serendra on Friday night. And you can see this. This is a posh condominium in Fort Bonifacio. The walls basically came out, exploded, and hit this poor truck. Absolutely wrong moment of time driving through that street and killed 3 people. Here, this is the story that's gotten the most number of votes on the mood meter. And this is the story of killing, of the explosion. At 8 p.m., a few minutes after, we posted the story, and it's yellow, afraid. But 9 p.m., an hour later, was the Rappler newscast, which was live. And by that point, we knew it wasn't a terrorist attack. And instead of being yellow, being afraid, it turned sad. Overall, that Saturday morning at 11 a.m., people were sad. You created the mood of the day. Each of your votes led to this. How does it become big data? Let's look at the month of May. And we look at the month of May because it's elections for the Philippines, right? This is the days at the bottom on the x-axis. We know that May 13th is election day. So this is election day. And again, green is happy, red is angry, purple is annoyed. And those are the ones that are just interesting. Filipinos were happy in the run-up to the election, to election day. But if you look here on May 13th, what happened? We became angry and annoyed. Why? We kind of know why, because election results came in slowly, right? When they came in slowly, we got annoyed, and then we became happy again, particularly on the 23rd, the day when the winners were announced. Look. When you pull all that data together, you can see that 77% of people were happy in the month of May, 77% of the votes. The one thing I like is at the end of the month, something happened that really made Filipinos angry. And it had nothing to do with politics. It had something to do with a very visceral reaction Filipinos seem to have. Do you guys remember what happened at the end of May? An event that really pissed you off. I will say it. It's about a comedian making a statement. Vice Ganda cracking a joke about Jessica Soho, a broadcaster, and look how angry we were. Right? So it was a little bit of a hit on a credible figure about weight and about sex and rape. Made Filipinos angry. Big data. So this is big data. There's no bigger data than elections, and the reason I go to this is the very first time that in elections you can see not just the results, but the granular data. That is what technology can do. When you mouse over these 12 senators, one, they change places automatically, which I love, right? And then if you mouse over them, it'll give you where every single vote came from. Journalists will no longer be accused of trending. We have no vested interest. Here's the information. It's all there. Bahala ka na. Diba? And ang ganda tignan pag God's eye view ng data. When you look at the data, this is what it looks like in God's eye view. This is the PH++ machines. For the non-Filipinos, you had nearly 54 million Filipinos voting for nearly 18,000 officials, 12 senators, national post. This is the PH+ machine up top. Going down here is the per hour. And so that's how each PH+ machine transmitted, and you can see the big gap in the middle. Why was there a big gap? That's the immediate question we asked, and it was because CF cards weren't working, because it looks very suspicious when in the middle you have at 3 a.m. the transmissions happening. Patterns, that's what you see with big data. Here's something we're trying to do now that's crowdsourcing. #BudgetWatch. It's the beginning of an anti-corruption campaign. If we're really serious about doing something about the pork barrel scam, you gotta follow the money. That's the way you catch terrorists. It's the way you catch corrupt people, corrupt lawmakers, corrupt anyone, not just, diba, Janet Napoles is in prison. I would better shut up now. So you can, again, do not be bored by numbers. Do not be bored by facts. Pull it out to God's eye view. I will leave you with this, with something the international community calls Typhoon Bofa. We in the Philippines know it as Pablo. And something that one guy who will speak to you later today, his name is Patrick Meyer, did along with OCHA. And this is the United Nations Office for, OCHA. You basically, what they did is they took all of our tweets. Again, imagine all your tweets make a difference, right? Patrick Meyer took the tweets and then he used volunteers. While we were asleep in the Philippines, they worked on it, they classified it, they geotagged it, and they then sorted it, and they mapped it. Patrick Meyer, the guy who did this, will be speaking to you later on. He's the guy who did Ushahidi, and he moved on from Ushahidi to do other things. Basically, machine learning, teaching a machine. How we can teach the machine. We are cyborgs. No, it's not about cyborgs. It's really about how this technology is. This is what we'll tell you about later on and how we all plug in. You can sit in your room and still be a hero if you plug into Project Agos. I'll leave you with this. This is the way we see the world today, where this is the Rappler debate. We had 6 candidates who were brave enough to come debate each other face to face, and while they were talking, there's a mood meter behind each of them where you're voting. There's nothing more transparent than that. It's real-time results, right? And what you can see is, this is the stage. They were looking out at Quezon Memorial Circle. There were about 1,000 people there, but you can see what they were looking at behind them. This is the world today. The digital exhaust will determine our future. Let me say that again. Our digital exhaust will determine our future. What you put online, the trail online you put in the digital world will help determine your future. That is big data. We mapped it. We took a look at the way their supporters worked, and by both mapping it, and the guy who's doing this, who's doing the map for our chief data scientist for Rappler is Russell Shepard, and he's going to stand up. He looks like an absent-minded professor. No, Russell, please give him a very warm Manila welcome. He just moved to the Philippines a month ago. What we found out here is this. Remember, When we all come together for disaster risk reduction, you will hear from the people who have spent their lives working on this. Lucille Sering has her personal experience. Lauren Lagarde, you know she's been talking about this from forever. And she'll tell you more now. You have other people who will talk to you this afternoon. It is their lives for them. It's good for us to listen to them because I don't know enough about it, but I know my life and the next generation. Guys, if we don't do something, the Philippines will be buried in water. People will die. And we can do something now with this technology. I'll leave you with these thoughts on big data. It is about predictions. Our behavior in the future is determined by our digital exhaust. So here are some of the dangers, because I'm not a good journalist if I don't tell you the dangers ahead. We'll shift from privacy to probability. Right? It's no longer whether or not you will or you won't. The data will know you will or you won't. The question is, how do you protect your rights to privacy? This is happening now. Algorithms are predicting the likelihood of things like health issues, like, will you get a heart attack? This is happening mostly in the Western world. We're not there yet in the Philippines. But if the algorithms say you're likely to get a heart attack, your health insurance premiums will go up. These are the companies who are using it, right? Or look at those finance companies, the banks who try to decide based on algorithms whether you will default on a mortgage. So they deny your loan, right? And then here's the one. You guys remember Minority Report? It's happening today. It's no longer science fiction. And they can pinpoint this. Okay, everybody knows the NSA and PRISM and Edward Snowden, right? There's a reason why that's happening because they can pinpoint who is more prone, who's behaving in a way that will make them carry out a terrorist attack. Well, so what happens if the algorithms say you're going to commit a crime, but you haven't committed the crime yet? Remember that in the movie? The police barge in and he's in bed with his wife and they say, you're going to kill your wife. Where's free will? How strong is the data? I just leave you with this because the big question now is, can you trump what the big data says about you? Okay, I'll leave you with this. This is going to be a whole day, a whole day where we will imagine #2030 now. We will help kick off a global dialogue and we will show what the Filipino is capable of doing. This is hopefully a day to plan. And hopefully by next year, we will all come together again and say, we helped prevent the loss of life. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yoshi.